My son David held the pen to my hand, his grip tight. "Sign here, Mum. It's for your own good." The paper was a voluntary commitment to Willow Creek Retirement Home. Voluntary. I hadn't slept through a night in months. My hands shook, and sometimes I forgot my own address. They said it was dementia. I looked at my daughter-in-law, Sarah, standing by the door with a suitcase she'd packed for me. Her smile was a sharp, cold thing. I signed. What else could I do? By sundown, I was in a sterile room that smelled of bleach and boiled cabbage. The door locked from the outside. That first night, lying on the thin mattress, I replayed the last year. The constant fatigue, the confusion. Always after the evening tea Sarah so lovingly prepared. A chill settled deep in my bones. It wasn't illness. It was a slow, calculated erosion. I closed my eyes and made a list in my mind. Names, dates, the specific metallic aftertaste of that tea. My family thought they had put me away. They had no idea they'd just unlocked a cage, and I was the one who'd been waiting inside. All I wanted was to get out and prove I was of sound mind. The price was this suffocating loneliness, the humiliation of being treated like a child. The staff called me dear and patted my hand. David visited once to drop off a photograph of my grandchildren. "It's better this way, Mum. You're safe here." Safe. The feeling of being watched was constant. Every time I asked to use the phone or see a different doctor, they noted it as agitation in my file. Then, a week in, a new nurse aide, a young woman named Maria, was helping me bathe. She commented on how clear my eyes were for someone with advanced dementia. I saw my chance. I whispered about the tea, the strange symptoms. She didn't dismiss me. She just listened, her expression unreadable. Later that day, she slipped a small, empty pill bottle into my hand, one she said she'd found in the trash after my son's last visit. The label was peeled off. My fingers trembled around the cool, smooth plastic. They hadn't just stolen my home. They had been stealing me, piece by piece. And now I had the first piece of proof. The pill bottle felt heavy in my robe pocket. I needed a plan. I had to get a blood test, something to show the toxins. But here, I was a prisoner. Failing would mean more sedation, more notes in my file labeling me paranoid. Dr. Evans, the facility's physician, made his rounds. He was a large man with a patronizing smile. "And how are we today, Eleanor?" "We." I forced a frail smile. "A bit tired, doctor." He checked my chart, nodding. "Your family is so concerned. They update me regularly." The weight of my own children feeding him lies was a vice. After he left, I waited for Maria. When she came to bring my lunch tray, I pressed the bottle back into her hand. "Can you find out what was in this?" I asked, my voice a thread. She hesitated, then nodded, palming it swiftly. The turn came at dinner. Maria wasn't on duty. A different aide brought the tray. As she left, I noticed a small, folded napkin tucked under the plate. I unfolded it. Inside was a single word, written in blue ink. Metals. My breath caught. They were poisoning me with heavy metals. And Maria was gone. Had they found her out? The word metals burned in my mind. Arsenic, lead. I needed to act before they silenced Maria permanently. Now I had to secure legal help. The risk was being completely isolated if I was caught. The next morning, I feigned a fall in the common room. The commotion got me a trip to the local clinic for an X-ray. The tension mounted as the orderly, a man named Joe, who worked closely with Dr. Evans, never left my side. In the clinic waiting room, I saw my chance. An elderly woman was struggling with a public phone. I asked Joe to help her, playing on his chivalry. The moment he stepped away, I dialed my old lawyer, Mr. Henderson. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. Arthur, it's Eleanor. I'm at Willow Creek. I need you to file a motion to revoke my son's power of attorney. Immediately. I heard the shock in his silence. Eleanor? They said you were incapacitated. They lied, I said, and hung up as Joe returned. The subtle shift was in his expression. He hadn't seen me use the phone, but he looked at me differently, no longer with pity, but with a flicker of suspicion. I had shown my hand too soon. Back in my room, the air felt thicker. Joe's suspicious look meant the clock was ticking. I just had to survive the backlash. The consequence would be increased surveillance, maybe even chemical restraints. Sure enough, Dr. Evans arrived with a syringe. For your anxiety, Eleanor. I pleaded, I argued, but it was no use. The sedative pulled me under into a fuzzy, helpless state. When I woke, my personal items had been searched. My photo of the grandchildren was gone. The control they had was absolute. They were stripping me of my memories, my connections. Hours later, a different face appeared at my door. A state social worker, Ms. Gable, here for a routine check. Dr. Evans hovered, explaining my condition. I fought the drug haze, focusing on her kind eyes. As she turned to leave, I managed to slur, "My tea was always bitter." She paused, her pen hovering over her clipboard. Dr. Evans laughed it off. The ramblings I mentioned. But Ms. Gable didn't laugh. She made a note. It was a small, almost invisible crack in their wall. They could drug me and steal my things, but they couldn't control every outsider who walked through the door. Ms. Gable's note gave me a sliver of hope. I needed to widen that crack. The price was enduring the increased isolation. My phone privileges were officially revoked. David visited, his face a mask of fake concern. "Mum, you have to stop causing trouble. You're embarrassing the family." The weight of my own son's words felt physical. He left a bag of my favorite hard candies. A peace offering? Or another vehicle for their poison? I didn't touch them. After he left, I examined the bag. Store-bought, sealed, probably safe. But then I noticed it. A single candy, unwrapped, was tucked at the bottom, different from the others. A turn. They were getting sloppy, or they were testing me. I flushed it down the toilet. The next day, I was summoned to Dr. Evans' office. He wasn't alone. My daughter, Clara, was there, tears in her eyes. "Mum, we're moving you to a more secure facility, for everyone's safety." The hard end hit me like a blow. They weren't just containing me. They were burying me deeper. And I knew, with a cold certainty, that Clara's tears were the most dangerous poison of all. Clara's tears dried as soon as Dr. Evans left the room, her face hardening into a mask I didn't recognize. "It's for the best, Mother. The new facility has better security for patients like you. Patients like me." The words cut deeper than any insult. They were transferring me to Oakwood, a place known for its locked wards and sedated residents. I knew what I had to do. I had to stop this transfer before it happened tomorrow morning. The crushing realization that my own daughter was a willing participant in this settled over me. She stayed for an hour, rearranging my few belongings, her touch clinical and cold. The tension mounted when she pulled a small bottle of pills from her purse. "Your new vitamins. Dr. Evans prescribed them." I knew they weren't vitamins. I nodded meekly, playing the confused old woman. After she left, I held the bottle, my hand steady for the first time in months. The turn came at night, a faint tap on my door. It was Maria, her face pale. "I can't stay," she whispered. "They fired me. but I mailed the pill bottle to your lawyer before they caught me." She slipped a piece of paper into my hand and vanished. Unfolding it, I saw a lab report confirming arsenic. The hard end was the sound of a key turning in my lock from the outside. They had locked me in early. I was alone, with proof in my hand and no way to use it. The lab report felt like a live wire in my hand. I had the truth, but I was trapped. I needed to get this evidence to someone who could act before my transfer at 9 a.m. The terrifying silence of the locked room, the feeling of being buried alive, was almost too much to bear. I could hear the night staff making their rounds, their footsteps pausing outside my door more frequently than usual. I felt their watchfulness like a weight. They knew I was a risk. I spent the hours before dawn memorizing the report. Then I chewed and swallowed the paper, destroying the physical evidence. It was a desperate act, but I couldn't let them find it. As the sun rose, a different aide brought my breakfast tray. It was Joe, his eyes avoiding mine. The turn happened when he set the tray down. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he leaned close and muttered, "Your lawyer called the front desk. They told him you were transferred last night." My heart leaped. Mr. Henderson was asking for me. But then Joe added, his voice low, "They're moving you now. Early." I heard a gurney being wheeled down the hall. They weren't waiting for 9 a.m. They were taking me right now. Two orderlies I'd never seen before entered my room without knocking. "Time to go, Eleanor." My focus shifted instantly. I had to leave a trail, something for Mr. Henderson to follow. The physical manhandling as they lifted me from the bed onto the gurney, their grips firm and impersonal, was the price I paid. I cried out, a weak, protesting sound, but it only made them strap me down tighter. Their efficiency was unnerving. They had done this before. As they wheeled me down the hallway, I caught a glimpse of Dr. Evans on the phone, his voice low and angry. "Handle the lawyer," he was saying. We passed the common room, and I saw Ms. Gable, the social worker, standing there with her clipboard. Our eyes met. The turn was the slight, almost imperceptible nod she gave me. She knew something was wrong. As they pushed me out the front doors into the cool morning air, I made a decision. I let my hand dangle over the side of the gurney and deliberately dropped the single, unwrapped hard candy from David's bag onto the pavement. A small, sticky breadcrumb. The hard end was the slam of the ambulance doors, enclosing me in darkness. But I had planted a seed of doubt with Ms. Gable. The ambulance ride was short and jarring. Oakwood facility was a grim brick building with barred windows. I needed to remain coherent, to fight the sedatives I knew they would give me. The overwhelming smell of disinfectant and despair that hit me as they brought me inside was a heavy burden. I was processed quickly, stripped of my own clothes and given a standard issue gown. A nurse immediately tried to administer an injection, adding to the strain. "This will help you relax." I turned my head, refusing. She called for assistance. Just as two orderlies approached, a voice stopped them. "I'll take it from here." It was Ms. Gable. She stood in the doorway, her expression stern. "I'm conducting an unannounced inspection. I need to speak with Eleanor alone." The turn was her authority cutting through their routine. In the sparse examination room, she spoke quickly. "I saw the candy. I checked your file at Willow Creek. It's been altered. The lab request Maria submitted is missing." My blood ran cold. They were covering their tracks. But Ms. Gable wasn't finished. "I can't stop the admission, but I can mandate an independent medical evaluation. It's scheduled for this afternoon." The hard end was her leaving, and the nurse returning with a pill cup. "The doctor insists." I had a chance, but I had to survive the next few hours drugged and vulnerable. I pretended to swallow the pill, hiding it under my tongue until I could spit it into the sink later. The fog they wanted to impose on me was my greatest enemy now. I had to stay sharp for the independent evaluation. The exhausting pretense of being more feeble than I was, to lower their guard, took everything I had. I was placed in a shared room with an elderly woman who barely spoke. The tension intensified when Dr. Evans arrived at Oakwood, conferring with the staff here. He had followed me. He was making sure his diagnosis held. The afternoon dragged on. Finally, a man I didn't know, Dr. Sharma, introduced himself as the independent physician. He was young, with kind eyes. As he began his assessment, asking me simple questions, I answered clearly and calmly. I told him about the tea, the symptoms, the lab report Maria had sent. I saw him listening, really listening. The turn came when he asked to see my medical chart from Willow Creek. The nurse handed it over, and Dr. Evans hovered nearby. Dr. Sharma frowned, flipping pages. "This doesn't match the blood work requests logged in the system database," he said quietly. Someone had forgotten to erase the digital footprint. The hard end was Dr. Evans stepping forward, his face red. "This evaluation is over. She is my patient." Dr. Sharma looked at me, then at Dr. Evans, and I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. The battle for my mind was now a matter of record. Dr. Evans stepped between me and Dr. Sharma, his voice a low growl. "This evaluation is over. I am her attending physician." I kept my eyes on Dr. Sharma, pouring every ounce of clarity I had into my gaze. I needed to secure his belief, to make him my ally before I was silenced again. If I failed, I would be returned to the chemical fog, a permanent erasure. Dr. Evans's authority here was a tangible force. The Oakwood staff watched him, waiting for his command. Dr. Sharma didn't back down. He held up the tablet showing the digital log. "The system shows a blood test was ordered weeks ago. The paper file says it was never done. I'd like to know why." It was a subtle shift. Dr. Sharma's professional curiosity was now piqued beyond a routine check. He looked from Dr. Evans to me. "I am completing my evaluation," he stated firmly. Just then, my daughter Clara's voice echoed in the hallway. "Where is my mother? I demand to see her." Her timing was no coincidence. Dr. Evans smiled, a thin, victorious smile. Clara burst into the room, her face a mask of manufactured concern, but her eyes held a cold panic. She saw Dr. Sharma and froze. She hadn't expected a stranger. Clara's entrance changed the room's chemistry. I needed to use her surprise to my advantage, to reveal the crack in their story. Enduring her performance, the fake tears and worried daughter act made my stomach turn, but it was necessary. "Mother, what have they done to you?" she cried, rushing to my side but careful not to touch me. Dr. Sharma observed us quietly. "Your mother was just explaining some inconsistencies in her medical history," he said. Clara's composure wavered. "She's confused. Her dementia—" I interrupted, my voice clear and steady. "I remember the tea you brought me every night, Clara. The bitter tea you said was a new herbal blend." The pressure intensified as Dr. Evans tried to steer Clara away, but Dr. Sharma stopped him. "I'd like to hear this." Clara's face paled. When she glanced at Dr. Evans, a silent, frantic question in her eyes, everything shifted. It was a look of conspiracy, and Dr. Sharma saw it. He made a note on his pad. "I will be recommending a full toxicology screen and a review of all power of attorney documents," he said. Clara's response was telling. She didn't argue. She simply said, "I need to call David," and left the room, her retreat more telling than any denial. Dr. Sharma's recommendation was a lifeline, but I knew my family would move quickly to neutralize it. I had to get a message to Mr. Henderson about this development before they isolated me completely. The crushing weight was the return to my room, where the staff, now under Dr. Evans's direct orders, watched my every move. A nurse confiscated the pen I'd been using, a small but significant loss. Later, a different aide brought my dinner. It was Maria's friend, a young man named Leo. He slipped a folded note under my napkin when no one was looking. His whispered words changed everything. Maria is safe. She talked to a reporter. My heart hammered against my ribs. A reporter? That could force everything into the open too fast, too messy. I read the note. It was Mr. Henderson's number and a message that he had filed the motion to revoke the power of attorney. But a hearing was set for next week. I had to stay sane and present until then. The evening medication round brought a harsh conclusion. The nurse didn't offer a pill. She had a syringe. "Doctor's orders for a calm night," she said. I was out of options. I had to take the sedative. The drug pulled me under, but I fought it, clinging to the memory of Mr. Henderson's message. I woke feeling groggy, but determined. I needed to survive until the hearing, to be lucid and convincing for a judge. I endured constant, grinding fatigue and the humiliation of being dressed and fed like an infant. The pressure mounted when Dr. Evans conducted his morning rounds with 2 large orderlies flanking him. "I understand you've been upsetting your family, Eleanor. We can't have that." He suggested a new, stronger medication regimen. I said nothing, playing the docile patient. After he left, I waited. During the afternoon activity hour, a change occurred. Ms. Gable appeared again, this time with a man in a suit. "Eleanor, this is Mr. Clark from the Adult Protective Services Investigation Unit." My breath caught. Mr. Clark was polite, but thorough. He asked about my living situation before Willow Creek, about my finances, about my relationship with my children. I told him everything, calmly, omitting nothing. As we spoke, I saw David and Clara through the window, arriving for a visit. They saw me talking to Mr. Clark and froze. The look on David's face was the culmination, not concern, but pure, unadulterated fury. He knew the walls were closing in. David and Clara's visit was short and tense. They didn't mention Mr. Clark. Instead, David talked about selling my house to pay for my care. It was a threat, delivered with a smile. My resolve hardened. I would not let them have my home. This emotional torture, listening to my son discuss the disposal of my life as if it were a burden, was what I had to endure. Their leverage was the power of attorney, still technically in effect until the hearing. "The market is good right now, Mom," David said, his eyes cold. After they left, I felt a profound despair. But then, with the evening mail, things changed. Leo brought me a letter, slipped between magazines. It was from Mr. Henderson. The court had moved the hearing up to tomorrow morning. A judge had reviewed Dr. Sharma's preliminary report and found cause for urgency. I had one night to prepare. The sound of my door being locked was the final note, but for the first time, it felt like a countdown, not a prison sentence. Tomorrow, I would face my children in court. I practiced what I would say, over and over, in the dark. The guard unlocked my door at dawn. "Court today, Eleanor?" This was it. My chance to prove I wasn't the crazy old woman they claimed. The hearing was in 3 hours, and I had to be perfectly composed. If I failed, David would sell my house, and I'd be locked away forever. The orderly who helped me dress was rough, yanking my arms into the stiff, unfamiliar clothes Clara had brought. A dress too large, meant to make me look frail and lost. In the transport van, Dr. Evans sat across from me, his expression smug. "Just tell the truth, Eleanor. No one will blame you for being ill." His presence alone was a constant reminder of the false story they were pushing. As we entered the courthouse, I saw David and Clara waiting, their faces tight with anxiety. That was my first sign of hope. Then, something unexpected happened. Mr. Henderson met me at the door, but he wasn't alone. Ms. Gable stood with him, holding a file. "I've submitted my report to the judge," she said quietly, "and I found something else." She didn't elaborate, but the look she gave me was full of promise. Inside the courtroom, as the judge called the session to order, David's lawyer stood and requested a private chambers meeting, excluding me. Ultimately, the judge agreed, and I was left in the hall, wondering what new scheme they were plotting. Sitting alone on the hard wooden bench outside the judge's chambers, I focused on staying calm. I aimed to endure whatever plan they were brewing in there. The uncertainty was agonizing, each minute feeding the fear that they would win. I could hear the muffled rise and fall of voices through the door. David's lawyer, Dr. Evans, and my children. Mr. Henderson was in there too, but I felt utterly isolated. A bailiff walked by, giving me a pitying glance that made my skin crawl. Then, the door opened, and Ms. Gable stepped out, her face pale. She sat beside me. "They're presenting new evidence," she whispered. "Dr. Evans has a statement from a pharmacy claiming you tried to buy arsenic yourself months ago." The tension grew. They were trying to frame me as suicidal or self-harming. But then, a shift occurred when Ms. Gable handed me a small note. "Maria is outside. She remembers the date on that pharmacy receipt. She was with you that day, buying allergy medicine. The receipt is forged." My heart raced. I had an alibi. The judge called us back in, and as I entered, I saw Clara avoiding my eyes. In the end, the judge announced he would review this new evidence, and I knew I had to prove it was a lie before he made his ruling. Back in the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. I needed to expose the forged receipt without seeming defensive. What made it difficult was the judge's growing impatience. He kept glancing at the clock, eager to wrap things up. David's lawyer presented the pharmacy slip, dated from a day I supposedly tried to buy poison. Mr. Henderson stood. "We have a witness who can attest to my client's whereabouts that day." He called Maria into the room. Her entrance caused a stir. Dr. Evans shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Maria testified clearly, describing our trip to the pharmacy for my allergy pills, even recalling the cashier's name. She provided her own receipt from that transaction. Then, unexpectedly, the judge's clerk quickly cross-referenced the records and found the forgery was crude. The date didn't match the pharmacy's log. The judge's demeanor changed. He looked at Dr. Evans and my children with open suspicion. "I'm revoking the power of attorney effective immediately," he said. Relief washed over me, but that feeling ended with David's cold whisper as we left the room. "This isn't over, Mother." I was free, but not safe. Mr. Henderson drove me to a temporary shelter, a small donated apartment for seniors in crisis. I intended to secure my home and ensure David and Clara could never do this again. The loneliness was profound, knowing how deeply my own children had betrayed me. That evening, as I sorted through the few belongings Ms. Gable had retrieved from Oakwood, I found a hidden envelope in my Bible, a letter from my late husband, John, that I'd forgotten. It mentioned a safe deposit box he'd set up for emergencies, with a key taped inside. Anxiety surged when my phone rang. It was Clara, sobbing and asking for forgiveness. I hung up, but her call left me shaken. Then, a knock on the door. It was a process server with papers. David and Clara were suing for guardianship, claiming I was a danger to myself. A change came when I focused on the key in my hand. I remembered the box held our original wills and financial documents. I called Mr. Henderson. We need to get to the bank first thing tomorrow. Finally, as I looked at the lawsuit papers and saw my children's signatures, a cold resolve settled in my soul. The next morning, Mr. Henderson picked me up early. We had to reach the bank before David could freeze my assets. The fear that he might have already alerted the bank was a heavy weight. The city outside felt alien after months of confinement. At the bank, the manager, Mr. Doyle, knew me from years of visits with John. I presented the key and my ID. He led us to the vault. The tension mounted when he hesitated, saying, "Your son called yesterday, asking about this box. I told him he needed your authorization." My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside, along with the wills, was a stack of bonds and a ledger detailing all the money John and I had saved. Money David and Clara knew nothing about. Unexpectedly, there was a small sealed envelope on top, labelled "For Eleanor, if they ever turn." I opened it. John's handwriting. "I never trusted them. The house is in a trust. Only you can sell it." I nearly wept. Mr. Henderson smiled. "This changes everything." Suddenly, Mr. Doyle informed us that David had just arrived at the bank, demanding to see me. David stood at the entrance to the vault room, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Mother, what are you doing here?" My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and resolve. I clutched the trust documents tighter, the crisp paper feeling like a shield. I needed to get these papers to safety and assert my independence right here, in front of him, to show that I was no longer the confused woman they had locked away. It pained me deeply to see my own son as an adversary, his eyes cold and calculating, devoid of the love I once knew. Mr. Henderson stepped slightly in front of me, a protective gesture that both comforted and shamed me. I shouldn't need protection from my child. David didn't come alone. Clara was with him, her expression pleading, but her eyes darted nervously, avoiding mine. "Mum, please, let's talk about this at home," she said, her voice soft but insincere, each word feeling like a trap designed to lure me back into their control. The bank manager, Mr. Doyle, cleared his throat, his professional demeanor fraying at the edges. "I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave, David. Your mother is conducting private business, and you are not authorized to be here." David ignored him, his gaze fixed on me like a predator. "Those documents don't change anything. You're not well, and the court will see that. We have doctors' statements, witnesses." The pressure was immense. He was trying to intimidate me, to make me doubt myself even now. Just then, my phone buzzed in my purse, a vibration that seemed loud in the tense silence. I glanced at it discreetly, shielding the screen with my hand. It was a text from Maria. "Reporter from the Daily Gazette wants to talk. He has evidence from Dr. Evans's past, malpractice, covered-up diagnoses." My breath caught in my throat. This changed everything. A potential ally in the press, someone who could expose the whole sordid scheme. I looked back at David, my voice steady, despite the tremor in my hands. "The only thing the court will see is your fraud, David. Your lies." I turned to Mr. Henderson. "Let's go. We have what we need." As we walked past David, he reached out and grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh with a strength that surprised me. "This isn't over," he hissed, his breath hot against my ear. What stayed with me was the feel of his fingers on my skin, a bruising reminder that the battle was far from won, and my own children were the enemy. Back in Mr. Henderson's car, I rubbed my arm where David had gripped me, the skin tender. I had to meet that reporter today before David could damage my credibility further. The emotional toll of confronting my children left me shaky, but I focused on the road ahead. Mr. Henderson drove us to a quiet cafe where a young man in a wrinkled suit waited. Ben, from the Daily Gazette. "Mrs. Eleanor, Maria told me your story," he said, his voice earnest. We sat in a corner booth, the smell of coffee grounding me. I laid out the trust documents and explained the poisoning, the forged receipt, the manipulated medical records. Ben listened intently, taking notes on a small pad. The pressure mounted when my phone rang again. It was Clara, leaving a tearful voicemail about family unity. I deleted it. Then, Ben revealed his own research. Dr. Evans has a history. A patient in his care died under suspicious circumstances 5 years ago, but it was settled quietly. The family signed an NDA. This shifted things, a pattern of behavior that could destroy his credibility. Ben agreed to publish an article, but he needed confirmation from another source. As we stood to leave, I saw David's car pull into the parking lot. He had followed us. What chilled me was the sight of him stepping out, phone to his ear, undoubtedly calling his lawyer to escalate their guardianship suit. We slipped out the cafe's back door, avoiding David. Mr. Henderson drove me to my house, the home I hadn't seen in months. I needed to reclaim it, to change the locks and secure it against my children. I felt a profound sadness seeing the garden overgrown, the porch light broken, signs of neglect that mirrored my own ordeal. As we approached, I noticed fresh tire tracks in the driveway. The front door was slightly ajar. My heart sank. Inside, drawers were pulled out, papers scattered. Someone had been searching for something. The pressure was immediate. David or Clara had been here, likely looking for the trust key or other documents. Mr. Henderson called the police to report a break-in. While we waited, I went to the kitchen, where a photo of my grandchildren sat on the counter, their smiles now a painful reminder. Then, I remembered something. I remembered a hidden floorboard in my bedroom closet, where John and I kept important items. I pried it open and found an old ledger detailing every financial gift we'd ever given David and Clara. Down payments for their homes, college funds for the grandkids. It was a record of their dependence, their greed. The police arrived, but they said it was a civil matter without proof of who broke in. What stung was the officer's suggestion. "Maybe you should consider a retirement community, ma'am." They saw me as just a frail old woman. With the ledger in hand, I knew my next move. Use their financial history against them in the guardianship hearing. I had to show the court that their motives were purely monetary. The emotional weight of reducing my family relationships to transactions was crushing, but necessary. Mr. Henderson helped me draft a counterclaim, alleging undue influence and financial exploitation. We filed it that afternoon. The strain increased when Clara showed up at my door, this time without David. "Mum, please, let's stop this. Think of the grandchildren," she begged, her eyes red from crying. I stood firm, the ledger heavy in my hands. "You should have thought of them before you tried to bury me," I said, my voice cold. She left, but not before warning, "David won't let this go." Later that evening, Mr. Henderson called with news. The judge had reviewed our counterclaim and scheduled an emergency hearing for tomorrow. Additionally, Ben's article had been published online, detailing Dr. Evans's past and raising questions about my case. Things changed with the public exposure. Comments poured in, many from others who had similar experiences. My phone started ringing with calls from news outlets. What followed was a call from David, his voice trembling with rage. "You've ruined us, Mother, but I have one last card to play." The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully in a simple blue suit, something John had always liked. I aimed to face my children in court with unwavering clarity, to finally end their control over my life. I felt the finality of it all, the realization that my family was broken beyond repair. Mr. Henderson picked me up, and on the way, he told me that David had filed a motion to dismiss our counterclaim, arguing I was coercing him. The pressure was palpable. If the judge sided with him, I could lose everything. In the courtroom, David and Clara sat with their lawyer, avoiding my gaze. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Wilkins, began by reviewing the new evidence, the ledger, the article, the trust documents. David's lawyer argued I was vindictive and unstable. Then, something unexpected happened. Ms. Gable entered the room and asked to speak. She testified about the inconsistencies at Willow Creek, the missing lab reports, and her own observations of my lucidity. Then, she presented a signed statement from Maria, corroborating the poisoning and the forged receipt. And that changed everything. Judge Wilkins listened intently, her expression growing darker. She then called Dr. Evans to the stand. Under questioning, he faltered, contradicting himself about the pharmacy slip. What sealed it was Judge Wilkins's gavel striking the bench. "I am dismissing the guardianship petition and granting a permanent restraining order against David and Clara from your property and finances. Furthermore, I am referring Dr. Evans to the medical board for investigation." I had won, but the silence from my children's side of the room was deafening. The first letter arrived 3 days after the court victory, from David's lawyer. It demanded I voluntarily lift the restraining order, citing the irreparable damage to family unity. I dropped it into the shredder without finishing it. I wanted to make my home a fortress, both legally and physically, so they could never touch me again. The profound silence now filled the rooms where my grandchildren's laughter used to echo. I changed the locks, installed a security system, and had my phone number unlisted. Then, Clara showed up at the end of the driveway, holding a bouquet of flowers, as if a peace offering could erase the arsenic. I didn't open the door. She left them on the porch, where they wilted in the sun. Later that afternoon, a certified letter came from the bank. David had tried to contest the trust, claiming undue influence from Mr. Henderson. When I called Mr. Henderson, he told me the judge had already dismissed David's motion as frivolous. Then, my doorbell rang. It was a woman from my church, Mrs. Peterson, holding a casserole. "I read the article in the Gazette," she said. "We believe you." Her words were a balm, but then I saw David's car parked down the street as she left, a silent reminder that the war wasn't over. With the trust secure, I turned to my will. I needed to rewrite it entirely, cutting David and Clara out and ensuring my assets went to charities and a fund for my grandchildren's education, bypassing their parents. The emotional weight of disinheriting my own children made my hands shake as I read the draft. Mr. Henderson came to the house to witness the signing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Think of your legacy, Mother. Don't do this." It had to be David or Clara. I blocked the number. As Mr. Henderson notarized the document, he mentioned that Dr. Evans had been suspended pending the medical board investigation. That was a small victory, but it didn't fill the void. I remembered the ledger of gifts I'd given them. I decided to include it, with the will, as evidence of their greed, so the court would understand my decision. After Mr. Henderson left, I sat at the kitchen table, the signed will in front of me. I realized that I had just legally erased my children from my life. and the only sound was the clock ticking on the wall, marking the passage of a family that no longer existed. A week later, a small envelope arrived in the mail, addressed in a shaky child's handwriting. It was from my granddaughter, Lily. "I miss you, Grandma," it read. My heart ached. I wanted to see her, to explain, but I knew any contact could be used against me. I was isolated from the innocents in all this. I called Mr. Henderson to ask about supervised visitation, but he advised against it until the legal dust settled. I saw a social media post from Clara, a photo of Lily with a caption about missing family members, clearly aimed at me. It felt like a public guilt trip. Then, Maria called me unexpectedly. She had left town but wanted to check in. She told me that the reporter, Ben, was working on a follow-up story about families exploiting elders, and he wanted to interview me. I agreed, seeing it as a way to control the narrative. We met at a park, and I spoke carefully, focusing on the facts. As I left, I saw Lily playing on the swings with a friend. She saw me and waved, a tiny, hopeful gesture. Clara rushed over to grab Lily's hand and pulled her away without a word, her eyes burning with hatred. The interview was published, and the response was overwhelming. Strangers sent letters of support, and my church group started a weekly check-in system for me. I wanted to rebuild a life without my children, to find a new purpose. The loneliness was still there, a constant companion, but I filled my days with gardening and volunteering at a local senior centre. David filed a lawsuit against the newspaper for defamation, dragging my name back into court. Mr. Henderson assured me it was a desperate move and likely to fail. One evening, I was at the centre, helping with a bingo night, when an elderly man named Frank shared his own story of a son who took his car and never returned it. We talked for hours, and I felt a connection I hadn't felt in years. His kindness was a reminder that family isn't always blood. Later, I received a letter from the medical board. Dr. Evans had lost his license. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. I came home to an empty house and realized that while I had won the war, the battlefield was strewn with the wreckage of my family. I sat on the porch swing John had built, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The legal battles were over, the documents signed, the restraints in place. My revenge was complete. David and Clara were cut off, their reputations tarnished, and they faced financial struggles without my support. But as the days turned into months, the anger faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I started writing a memoir, not for publication, but for myself, to make sense of it all. I reconnected with old friends and found joy in small things. The first bloom in my garden, a phone call from Maria, the weekly lunches with Frank. One afternoon, I received a card from Lily, sent secretly through a friend. It was a drawing of us together, with the words, "I love you, Grandma." I framed it and put it on the mantel. I knew I might never have a full relationship with my grandchildren, but that was their parents' choice, not mine. I had my home, my freedom, and my peace. The story ends here, not with a bang, but with the soft closing of a book and the gentle rhythm of a life lived on my own terms.